You're also launching your own YouTube show. You see it right there on your screen. And we know the Copeland's Corner from KGO days, and you did the podcast and everything like that. But now you're moving it on YouTube. Tell us about it.
Well, here's what the deal is I started doing a podcast because Carolyn got tired of listening to me bitch about things. So she said, Dad, just do a pod, just shut up and do a podcast. So we started a podcast in a studio over on Battery Street about 3 weeks
A while
before
ago.
the shutdown.
Yeah.
3 weeks before the shutdown. And so then we decided, you know what, we'll just keep doing it from home, and we'll do it over Zoom. So we did 155 of them. 155
Wow.
of them, and then on a whim on the 156th show last week, I thought, you know what, let's just turn the cameras on and let's see what happens. Let's see what it looks like. And we had Greg Proops on, and Don Reed, who's very, very funny, and Ron Bai, and we had a great hour. And we decided we're going to do that every week. So the way it'll work is that you can, on Thursday mornings, the audio drops of the podcast. And then Thursday afternoon, early evening, if you want to watch us and actually see us, all the editing, everything will be done, and you can catch us that way. You can catch us on YouTube.
That is awesome. Yeah. So there it is. You guys go to the YouTube channel Copeland's Corner Podcast and subscribe. So make sure that you are subscribed so you do not miss a moment. And not Grandpa, your granddaughter is just absolutely gorgeous.
Grandpa. Grampy Copeland.
What's your nickname? Oh, you don't go by Grandpa?
No, I go by Pappy. I don't go by Grandpa. Grandpa's too
I like that. Oh, is that right? Is that okay?
That's Pappy.
Okay.
That's Grandpa.
Well, you're wrapped. All I know is every single picture I see of you and her and Nora are just gorgeous. She's gorgeous. She is just too freaking cute, that kid. So I can only imagine how spoiled Pappy is spoiling this little girl. So congratulations again on that.
She's 10 months old. I'm spoiling her like crazy, and I can't wait till she gets bigger to buy to actually play with all the stuff that I bought her already that she's too young to play with.
He's like, I got a car. I have a car. Do you want a car? It's right over here. I'll give you whatever you want. It's waiting for you, my love. There you go. Okay, so I want your take on things. First off, did you see Maureen on America's Got Talent?
I saw the first one. I have not seen the second one. How did she do on the second one?
So, she didn't move through. They only chose 2 people. I don't watch America's Got Talent, but I watched it because Maureen was on it. And it was interesting. So she did fabulously, I thought, in the semifinals. She did unfortunately not make it through. Sorry, spoiler alert. It happened yesterday. There's your spoiler alert. But what I found interesting and I wanted to talk to you about is afterwards she was thanking everybody. She kind of did a live Facebook. And we're going to have to get her on again, Kim, because I want to talk to her as well. But as she was talking about comedy in general, you've been in comedy for years, Brian, and how hard it is to stand up on the stage in this type of competition and kind of break through the audience when there's all these other talents, quote unquote, that are on stage. I mean, what do you think about comedy right now and where it's going and just kind of sometimes you're being vilified for the jokes and sometimes you can't make certain jokes?
Well, I don't do too much straight stand-up anymore. I did straight stand-up for 20 years. I started when I was 18 years old, and I worked my way up to where I was touring with Smokey Robinson and Lionel Richie. We played the Universal Amphitheater and Constitution Hall and all over the country. And then I did this one-man show, which was a combination of comedy and drama called Not a Genuine Black Man. It was supposed to run 6 weeks, and then I was booked at a club in Sunnyvale at the end of the 6 weeks, and it ended up running for like the next 7 years. And turning into the longest running show in San Francisco history. So and that's another project I've got going. Rob Reiner and I are turning it into a TV show. We got a script ready to go, and then Writers Guild went on strike. Then Writers Guild goes on strike. It took us months. We finally, the script is ready. It's ready to go. Now we're on strike. But in terms of comedy itself, it's a hard thing to judge comedy. And comedy competition are very, very hard. San Francisco has one every year. We used to have to do it when we were starting out. If we wanted to work, the producers of it were like the big bookers in town, and they wouldn't even look at you to book you unless you did the competition. And it's just hard because what you think is funny may not be what the judge next to you think is funny. And so it's so subjective. I've never liked the idea of comedy competitions. In terms of what you can and you can't say, it's dicey. I do like one straight comedy set a year. I'll put on like a New Year's Eve show. I haven't the last couple of years because of COVID, but we do a big New Year's Eve. Chip's done it. I saw Chip on the show. Chip has come and done it a couple of times for us. And it's hard to know what you can get away with and what you can't anymore. Jerry Seinfeld, for example, will not play colleges. He will not play.
Oh, funny! I didn't know that.
No, he won't play colleges because he got booed for a joke that was a dumb joke that was just so far over the line as far as what the audience reaction was, that it was like beyond politically correct. He did this thing like how people, scroll through their phone, to decide whether or not they're going to talk to you like they're a gay French king. That's what he said. Like they're a gay French king, and he's doing this, and they booed him almost off the stage for doing that and for doing the show. And he said, "Forget it. I'm not going to do colleges anymore because it's so." All the stuff that we thought that was dangerous or thought was okay to do or thought we were, breaking the rules. The generation that we raised, they don't want to hear it. I can't keep straight on pronouns right now in terms of what it is. I taped the thing. I've been doing stuff for NBC, and I taped the thing for Pride, for Oakland Pride. And the tag for it was the LGBTQ community, and I had to retape it because I had to say LGBTQ plus. Okay, I know about the plus. That apparently it's offensive not to say the plus. Okay, so what comes after the plus? Is there something after the plus? I don't know. Next week there may be. I may see the wrong thing, in which case I'm booed off the stage. So it's hard to know what you can and what you can't say. And to have to worry about that leaves you too much inside of your own head, to be able to do it. Whereas a play, doing a solo play, I know exactly what I have to say because I've said it 100 times. The play is locked. It's lines. It's timed. If there's something that I know is not going to work, then that line is just out for the next, the duration of the rest of the run.
What's the reaction been? I can imagine that you have some of these kind of dicey topic conversations on your Copeland's Corner podcast, and you're talking to a bunch of comedians. I mean, I would assume that your roundtable is a free-for-all.
It pretty much is. What it is I pull a bunch of news stories, and we just kind of go through the news of the week. But we usually end up talking a lot about show business and about what you can and can't say. Like the episode that dropped today, we talked about women in comedy and about how different it was. I started comedy the week after I graduated high school back in the early 80s. That's how far back it was. And you hardly ever. There were a handful of women who you'd see doing stand-up, and they wouldn't get prime spots. They would not get prime spots. And part of it was sexism. Most of it was sexism. There was this prevailing wisdom among comedy bookers and producers that people didn't think women were funny or guys who want to hear what women had to say. And so now there are a lot more women who are performing who are hysterical, but it's still nowhere near parity. It's still nowhere near close. And there are things that as a guy I can say that a woman can't say.
Like what? What do you think that a woman can't joke about that you can joke about?
Things that a woman can't joke about that I can joke about. In terms of things that have to do with dating and have to do with coitus, you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very, very, very careful. I will tell you, the most educational film that I've seen in the last 5 years, Barbie. The most educational film.
Didn't you love that movie?
I love that movie, and I learned so much as a man about really that's patriarchy. Really, that's sex. Wow. Okay. Here I thought I thought I was a feminist. I guess I'm not. I know not to say this. But that movie was great. I thought that movie was brilliant.
I loved that movie. I actually didn't watch it with my daughter. She ended up going with her friends. I took my 12-year-old son to the movie. We made this whole movie day about it. And what was interesting, Brian, is he's a 12-year-old boy, very sensitive, I was about to say the word woke because that brings me to what he was saying. I asked him what he thought about the movie when it was done. He's like, it was good. It seemed a bit woke. My 12-year-old son says this to me.
Oh,
And I was like,
geez.
okay. And so we went out to dinner because we were doing a double feature type of thing. And I said, what does woke mean? And he, one, didn't describe it properly. He had no real idea, but it's what they hear nowadays. It's this, this kind of narrative even seeped into my 12-year-old, very liberal household. And I was like, what? And then I went down the whole history of how woke started and how it's been co-opted and, what is wrong with actually being woke, the true definition. And I challenged him the next time someone does exactly what you did, which is use a word, ask them what they mean by it. And we had a great conversation about it. He actually, at the end, he's like, oh, okay, fine. But I don't want to get lectured every time I have a conversation. Like, you're just going to have that with your mother. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, he liked the movie too.
There was a poll I saw. It was an AP poll, like in the last couple of weeks, where they ask Americans whether or not the word woke is a pejorative and whether you view it negatively or positively. And 67% of Americans view it positively. So again, it's Ron DeSantis and an ignorant vocal minority, who are against anything that discusses the history of America and how we came to be where it is that we are today. So it's good that you had that conversation with your son, and it's good that you called him out.
He's a very thoughtful kid, and it was just so funny. I was walking out of the movie, just like, what'd you think of the movie? And he's really a thoughtful kid. So when it came out of his mouth, I was like, oh, here we go. I was like, we're not just gonna let this pass. Like, your mother is we're gonna have a mini talk show right here, my son, and we're gonna sit across and do this. And he was totally open to it because I'm not raising my kids to just, not only just to absorb things without thought, right? But also push the narrative, even on myself. Like, he was questioning me. Well, what about this and what about that? And I think that's how we learn. And it just seems like nowadays, Brian, we can't even have those conversations with certain groups of people. They don't want to hear it. They want to speak to you in sound bites that they hear on Tucker Carlson or Fox News or whatever. And they don't even want to scratch the surface of, what do you mean when you say something is woke? What do you mean that you're tired of being politically correct? Are you telling me that this is the world you want to live in, that you can call people whatever you want to call them and there's no consequence for that? It just boggles my mind. And I don't know how we get back to it. And it's frustrating.
Remember the good old days when all we had to worry about was, where do babies come from? Remember the good old days when that was the toughest question that we had to worry about. I remember my son Adam being in the car, being about 10 years old, and asking me just on a drive, like the baseball practice or something. By the way, Dad, where do babies come from?
When a man and a woman love each other very, very much.
I have a question for you, Brian. Do you miss being on the radio? Is there anything about radio in and of itself that you kind of long for those days? Or do you feel like you're able to express yourself, get your opinions out with Copeland's Corner, and that you don't miss it at all? I just wondered what your thoughts were about it.
Well, I have a lot of different outlets that I'm able to get my opinions out. So as far as getting opinions out, no. But what I do miss about it is I miss the town square feel. And I miss interacting with callers. And especially callers, because Carolyn produced for me the last 2 years. And Carolyn would always find the most ignorant, ignorant, argumentative, this will be shooting me, fish in a barrel, and just let them come on and say something stupid, and then you try to talk to them, and I miss that. I miss the sparring. The sparring was fun.
Yeah, I miss that too. But I'll tell you, now that you have your YouTube show, the community that you create in the live chat, I know it's not the same. But we've had a couple of times, we'll put the link to our show in the chat and people will actually click on the video and come on sometimes. Not the same, but the communities that we have formed on YouTube that I know are just going to move right on over to your show as well. It is amazing. It's not the same though. And I miss it too. I miss opening up the phone. And either I change somebody's mind or they change my mind, right? Like, I never saw it that way. And it's hard to get that, in this format.
Those thoughtful conversations. And, when you're able to have a caller on and have an actual thoughtful conversation and learn something. Because I've learned a lot from, I was there for 27 years. 27 years straight through. I was figuring it out because my son Adam is on KNBR now every day.
He's been doing an awesome job.
Mm-hmm.
Is he doing great? And so I figured out from 1986 until now, there has been a Copeland on radio, TV, or both nonstop. From 1986 and up until now.
Look at that.
So he's carrying on the torch for me. So I passed on the torch, and so now he can talk to people and argue about sports. He can argue about sports.
Well, I tune in sometimes because obviously I'm not going to go to the spread for any sort of sports news because that's ridiculous. I obviously go to KNBR. I love seeing him. He's great on social media. I follow him on Instagram and all those sorts of things. So, Kim says, I heard Adam on the Steph Curry doc on Apple TV Plus. Well, look at that. I didn't know that he was on there. I must have missed that part.
I didn't know
Kim,
that.
you're gonna have to find the time so I can go back and watch. I loved that documentary, by the way. But I didn't know that Adam was on it. Look at that. John says, I've been a big fan of Ryan's ever since the R&B joke hour. Remember that?
Yeah,
do you ever talk to Ron?
Yes. Ron is in Phoenix, and I go and I visit Ron. Ron's in Scottsdale, and I go and I visit Ron about every 2-3 months. I come out for a few days.
Oh, nice.
And I was last there about 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, and they were in the middle of a 31-day run of 110-degree temperatures. It didn't drop below 110 degrees, and the low was 90. The low was 90.
My brother lives in Arizona. It's hell on earth. It's absolutely hell on earth.
It's unbelievable. And it's like, what I do is I go and I sit in this house all day and we have the air conditioning on. You don't realize that it's cool.
Yeah.
How hot it is outside. And then I'll have Uber come and pick me up like at 11 o'clock at night. And I open the front door and it's like, like when you're baking in the oven and you open the oven and then that's exactly what, and this is like 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane. I miss my brother and I miss my nieces and nephews, but there's no freaking way I could live like that. That's every day. That is, you can't go down the slide. You can't go to the park. You can't even walk your freaking dog unless they have shoes on. It's too hot.
It's a good thing that global warming is a hoax and we'll be really hot. We'll be really hot. But back to the joke hour. We did the joke hour for 20 years, and we were talking about that last time I saw him about whether or not we could do that today. And what the joke hour was is that listeners would send in jokes, and I wouldn't. His wife Jan would go through and pick them out, and he would see them in advance. But I never wanted to see them until I read them on the air, so that way our reactions would be for real. And there's stuff there. We started to remember jokes, and there's no way, talk about what you can and can't say. There's no way. There's just no way we could do that today.
It was funny. I remember the first time I heard the joke hour, and I did not have a history with it. So I'm turned on KGO, and you guys are going, I'm like, what are they? What? I was like, kind of, and I'm not a pearl clutcher, but I was like, are they saying this on the radio? I was like, what are they doing right now? I had never laughed so hard. It was such a good bit, like really was. I know so many people look forward to it. And again, something that I agree with you. I don't know if it could happen right now, and it sure as hell probably wouldn't happen on terrestrial radio. No way.
Not a prayer. On satellite radio, yeah, but not a prayer. But what's interesting is that and there's something else Ron was talking about. We did that maybe 3 or 4 times a year, at the most 4 times a year. And he had on presidents, he had on royalty, he had on best-selling authors, and 9 times out of 10, if he were stopped somewhere, people wanted to talk to him about the joke hour.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I had President Carter on, and you want to talk to me about this joke that I told 6 months ago.
Yep, pretty much.
Lori says, wants to know if you're planning on doing a live show. She said she just went to subscribe to your channel. Thank you, Lori, for doing that. But it has only video. You have to get to 1,000 subscribers before you can go live, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is right now. Yeah. So since we just started, I mean, we just started last week's show, last Thursday, is when we started putting up videos. So when we go to 1,000 subscribers, we'll probably start going live. We'll probably start.
Well,
doing
it's going to happen immediately because everyone's
Yeah.
going to start signing up now that we've told them to. So look
That's
at
right.
the URL right there, Copeland's Corner Podcast on YouTube. You'll see that smiling mug. You know what I also miss? I miss arguing with you at KGO about every sort of thing. Every time I have a freaking hot dog, I remember the debate that we got into over ketchup and mustard, and that freaking blew up. But I miss.
Oh, well, that was wrong because you were wrong.
What?
Because you were wrong.
I wasn't actually. I think we actually determined that I wasn't. But no, I would go in and Brian, and we would just crack up about all sorts of topics. And I think I also miss that the people like Kim. I love seeing Kim every day. But you and Carolyn and just the whole team. I mean, Kim Schaffer, she's always in. But it's just our whole crew in the radio station, the off-air conversations that don't ever make it when the mics are on.
Yeah.
I miss it. I really do.
Brian and I used to be in the newsroom, and I'd be doing news, but he'd be looking for items for a show and be talking about certain topics of the day. And in talk radio, usually you have to isolate. Well, what's the question? You can present a story, but what's the question that you're going to ask people it's going to engage them to start thinking and want to call in with a response? And so we would always debate, what's the question? And he'd read a story and I'd be like, and I'd shout out my question. And then we'd get in this debate about what's the question and no, it's this and no, it's that. And I miss those moments of kind of thinking through things and bantering back and forth like that. And I miss hearing you too. So I'm going to have to log into your podcast and check it out.
Exactly.
Thank you. But it was real collaborative, and that was the thing. Even if it wasn't your show, like in terms of what it is that we did, it would still always end up being collaborative. I remember a thing that we ended up doing that I hadn't planned on doing. You and I were talking off the air, Nikki, about whether or not, I forget what the news story was, but it was like somebody who his wife died and he got married like 2 weeks later. And the conversation we were having was, okay, well, shouldn't there be a respectful period of time? And you're going, I'm dead. And I go, wait a minute. If you die and your husband gets married like in a week, you're okay?
Oh,
you
yeah.
go, I'm dead. I don't care.
Now I'm like, my husband better hop in the casket. But yeah, I miss. And honestly, we were talking about, the Hunter Biden and everything like that. Your daughter, excellent freaking producer. I mean, she would come up with some of the topics for you that were just amazing. And I don't know, you got some talented kids. I don't know where exactly they got it from, Brian, but
Your mother.
Very talented family. I'm just saying. And I miss all of you. I really do. A lot of people love seeing you. Holy S, Brian Copeland. Yeah. So, okay. Well, we'll have you back on the show. But again, there is the YouTube link, Copeland's Corner, just Copeland's Corner podcast. There you go on YouTube. Get them up to 1,000. We could do it in a less than a week. I am positive. And then you can get Brian live. There you go.
And if you want to it'll be easy. If you want to just hear the audio is already dropped for the news show, for today's show, and the video will be up later on today.